Girls, it's Mrs. Charles. We're talking about comparing and contrasting characters, and a really great book for that is called Town Mouse, Country Mouse. There are different versions of this story from Aesop's Fables, but this is my favorite one. It's written and illustrated by Jan Brett. She does a really great job of illustrating and making predictions about what will happen on the next page, and I'll be sure to show the illustrations to you while I read. Town Mouse, Country Mouse, Jan Brett. One morning, the town mouse woke up shivering from a dream about the kitchen cat who prowled the house. I need a vacation, he said to his wife. Let me take you to the countryside where I was born. Life is quiet and peaceful there. The sun shines brightly every day, and the air is so clear that you can see the stars at night. And nothing will prepare you for the taste of wild blackberries. Let's go right away, she said. So the town mouse and his wife packed a picnic and set off for the country. The country mouse and her husband were at their tree stump house, exhausted from searching for food and avoiding the hungry owl who lived nearby. Sometimes I wish we lived in a townhouse where all the food you can eat is right there in the pantry. They say that the smell of cheese makes your whiskers tingle. Mine are tingling already, her husband exclaimed. As you can see, this is the city mouse and his wife, and this is the country mouse and his wife. The town mouse were outside the country mouse's house, putting a huge chunk of cheese in the middle of their picnic cloth. The country mice peered down at it. They heard the town mouse exclaim, "This is the life! Wildflowers, spring peepers, if only we lived here." The country mice crept out. "You like it here?" they asked. "Why, we've always wanted to live in a town house." The town mouse offered them a nibble of cheese. "Why don't we trade houses?" he said. "Would you?" asked the country mouse, her mouth stuffed full of the delicious cheese. "We'll leave right away," she said. As they said goodbye, each of the mice thought that they had the better part of the bargain. As you can see them there having the picnic, and they're exchanging the key to switch houses. And you can see someone over here is watching. It was dark when the country mice arrived in town and found the house. They tiptoed inside and wandered into the sewing room, where they found what they thought was a sumptuous bed and fell sound asleep. Much too early the next morning, a loud clanging woke them up. Sooty clouds of smoke were pouring over them, and they heard a strange voice purring loudly. "Sauces and hams, it's hungry I am. Sauces and hams, it's hungry I am. Mice in my stew, wait till I catch you." "Who do you think that is?" the country mouse asked his wife. So there they are in the apartment or in the city, and then you can see someone's cooking in the kitchen and making a lot of city smoke. They're not used to seeing a cat. The town mouse and his wife were up with the birds, ready to gather wild blackberries and grass in the grassy meadow for breakfast. They could smell them. They just couldn't find them. As the town mouse's wife turned to remind her husband to remember the way home, she felt a large wet drop on her head. What was that?" she asked. "Is the bathtub leaking?" "No, we're not. We're in the country now," he said. "Those are raindrops." Just then, lightning lit up the sky. The rain poured down as the two drenched mice ran wildly for their tree stump home. As you can see, they're getting wet. They're not used to being outside in the rain. And then you might see in the corner here, someone is outside with them as well. The country mice were looking forward to their first splendid meal in the pantry. "I'm sure there is ham in the ice chest and rolls in the bread box, but the best smell of all is coming from up there," the country mouse told her husband. "It must be a fine old cheese. I'll climb on your shoulders and get it." But she wasn't she couldn't quite reach it. "Stand on your toes," she called down. But just as she got a hold of the cheese, her husband lost his balance. The top slammed down, and she was left hanging by her tail. Help me, I'm caught!" So that's the country mice trying to get the cheese out of the pantry in the city. Back in the country, the town mouse had put his dry clothes on. He was especially proud of his bright new jacket. "So colorful and eye-catching," he said to his wife. "Let's stroll in the forest. We'll come back loaded with acorns and hickory nuts." But their walk was soon interrupted. The town mouse's colorful coat was so eye-catching that it caught the eye of a curious blackbird, and if his wife hadn't held him by his foot, he would have been carried off. It's not a good idea to wear bright colors in the woods. Not far away in town, the country mouse felt his wife's silky tail. "Nothing broken," he said, but when he looked in her eyes, he saw how sad and discouraged she was. "I know something that will cheer you up," he told her. "Follow me." He had spied a small window up above the pantry shelves. Together they climbed higher and higher. When they reached the top, he rubbed away the soot, and they looked out at a piece of blue sky. "Doesn't it look like home?" the country mouse asked his wife. The town mice stood quietly together after their awful blackbird scare. "I thought I had lost you forever," the town mouse whispered to her husband. They looked around. "How still and peaceful it is now." The sun had come out, and everything was glistening and green. "It is beautiful here," she said. "We should try to enjoy it." "I know," the town mouse said, "but I miss the sound of the city, all the hustle and bustle. Here I feel so alone. And in our cozy townhouse, we knew what to expect," his wife added. The country mice knew to stay at home in a thunderstorm, and they knew what to expect from the hungry owl. But they soon found out that there were different dangers here when they discovered a tasty morsel of blue cheese sitting on a pine board. "This time you take the cheese. I'm still shaking from being caught in the cheese box," the country mouse said. So her husband crept towards the cheese, whiskers trembling. As he reached it, his foot slipped and he heard a whoosh, followed by an enormous slap, and he was thrown across the room. He landed in a warm bundle of something soft and furry. I don't think the country mice are familiar with mouse traps. And I wonder what soft and furry thing he landed in. The country mouse was shaking from his close call. "I can barely stand." He winced as his wife pulled him up and patted down his crumpled whiskers. It was then that she noticed the bundle on which her husband had landed was tipping and turning. It was alive. Two green eyes snapped open. "Run!" she cried, getting a good look at it. "It's an owl with teeth." So they're used to running from owls, but in the city, they have to run from cats. The town mice knew how to avoid mousetraps set with cheese, but they soon found that the country has its own perils when they explored the riverbank hand in hand. Suddenly, the water began to boil and churn, and a huge wet head popped up and stared at them. It was a sea otter. The mice tore back to their tree stump home, only to find a hedgehog rolled into a ball in front of the door. Then they heard an animal crashing towards them through the underbrush. "I can't take this any more," the town mouse quacked, and she raced for the nearest tree with her husband right behind her. So the city mice are not used to all these wild animals. From the tree, they could see the town lights blink on as the sun went down and the stars came out one by one. "What shall we do?" the town mouse asked his wife. But before she could answer, she saw a pair of glowing eyes right beside them, and they were face to face with the most terrifying creature of all, a cat with wings. Shrieked the town mouse. "That's it for me," his wife cried, and they ran down the tree and toward town as fast as their legs could take them. So they think the owl is a cat with wings. As the town mice headed frantically along the road, the country mice were fleeing in terror towards the country. Their paths crossed, but neither saw the other. They were so frightened. Even the sky seemed to be falling down on them. The country mice didn't stop running until they could see their tree stump in the distance. And look who was following them. The town mice kept on running until they reached their town house. The musty smell of old wood and smoke from the kitchen all seemed wonderful. Even the street sounds outside sounded cheerful and friendly. "There's no place like home," sighed the town mouse, and he and his wife settled into a warm old slipper. "There's no place like home." Atop their cozy tree stump house, the country mouse and her husband looked up at a half-full moon shining down on them. They sighed happily. "We missed you," they said together. So there's the city mice in their slipper, and then here's the country mice looking at the moon. Back on the road, the cat and the owl knocked each other out when they collided head on. The cat, slowly waking up, touched his bruised head gingerly. He looked up to see the owl brushing himself off. It was then that he had an idea. "Owl, how would you like to trade places with me? I've always wanted to try the simple life in the country." And do you think that would be a good idea for the owl and the cat to switch houses as well? Well, that's the story of Town Mouse and Country Mouse. And it is a wonderful tale about sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. Sometimes the place that you live is just perfect for you. I wanted to talk about the characters in the story, so I have a character comparison set up here. And sometimes we use a Venn diagram with two circles, and sometimes we can use anything that has two separate areas. And this is a pair of glasses. So it's giving you the glasses as a reminder to look at the differences with your eyes, to see them, but also to remember them from the story. The details in the story about the characters, about what they said, about what they did, and how they acted. So there was a lot of differences between the city mice and the country mice. And I'd like you to think about those differences and complete your own comparison and contrast glasses in the graphic organizer that I have posted in the choice board. All right, well, check back and I will show you my responses after you're done. All right, bye. Have fun.